Today, we need to talk about one of the most frustrating, overwhelming, and oddly stressful purchases you will ever make for your home, the kitchen knife. Picture this. You are standing in a home goods store or scrolling endlessly online, staring at a massive wall of gleaming steel. You see a single knife that costs $200, and right next to it, an entire block containing 18 knives, a pair of shears, and a sharpening steel, all for $99. Your brain immediately starts firing off questions. Why is that one single knife so expensive? Do I actually need 18 different blades just to make dinner? What is the difference between stainless steel and high carbon steel? And why does my current knife bruise my tomatoes instead of slicing them cleanly? If you feel completely lost, don't worry. It is not your fault. The cutlery industry has spent decades convincing us that we need an army of specialized blades to cut an onion. Today, I am going to cut through the marketing noise, strip away the confusing jargon, and give you the ultimate masterclass on kitchen knives. We will cover the big mistakes people make when buying, the real difference between materials, the only 3 knives you actually need, and how to care for them so they last a lifetime. Let's get into it. Let us begin with the biggest trap in the entire culinary industry, the massive multi-piece knife block set. We have all seen them. They sit proudly on kitchen counters, holding a dozen or more matching handles. It looks professional, right? Wrong. The reality is that these big sets are a marketing illusion designed to give you quantity over quality. When you buy a massive, cheap knife block, you are paying for wood and a lot of filler steel. Think about it. Out of those 15 or 20 blades, you will likely use 2 or 3 of them on a regular basis. The rest will sit there for years, gathering dust and grease. You will have a knife for bread, a knife for cheese, a knife for tomatoes, 3 different sizes of utility knives, and 6 identical steak knives that you only bring out when company visits. Instead of spending $100 on a basket full of mediocre soft steel blades that go dull after 3 uses, you are infinitely better off spending that same $100 on 1 or 2 high-quality, exceptionally crafted knives. This brings us to the next massive point of confusion: Western versus Japanese knives. This is not just about where the knife was manufactured. It is about an entirely different philosophy of engineering, steel, and cooking technique. Traditional Western knives, usually from German or French heritages, are built like tanks. They are designed to be heavy, durable, and forgiving. The steel is slightly softer, meaning the blade can strike a chicken bone or a hard plastic cutting board without chipping. Western knives also have a distinct, pronounced curve along the edge of the blade, which is engineered specifically for a rocking motion. You keep the tip of the knife anchored to the cutting board and rock the handle up and down to chop. Japanese knives, on the other hand, are built like precision surgical instruments. The steel is much harder, which allows bladesmiths to sharpen the edge to an incredibly steep, razor-sharp angle. A typical Western knife is sharpened to an angle of about 20 degrees on each side. A Japanese knife is often sharpened to 15 degrees or even less. This means a Japanese knife will slide through food with absolute zero resistance. However, because the steel is harder, it is also more brittle. If you try to hack through a bone or a frozen piece of meat with a delicate Japanese knife, the edge can easily chip or crack. Furthermore, Japanese blades tend to be much flatter, meaning they are designed for a clean, vertical, up and down push cut rather than a rocking motion. So, which philosophy is right for you? If you want a rugged workhorse that you can throw into heavy-duty tasks without worrying about fragility, go Western. If you want unmatched precision, effortless slicing, and you treat your tools with absolute care, go Japanese. Now, let us demystify the metal itself, because knife metallurgy is where most consumers get completely tricked by clever buzzwords. You will see labels shouting about surgical steel, titanium-coated steel, or laser-tested alloys. Let us break down the only 4 materials you actually need to know, and explain which one is truly the best. First up is standard stainless steel. This is what you find in budget knives. It contains a high percentage of a metal called chromium. Chromium is fantastic because it forms an invisible protective layer that prevents rust and corrosion. You can leave a stainless steel knife wet in the sink overnight, and it will look perfectly fine in the morning. However, there is a major catch. To make the steel highly rust-resistant, manufacturers keep the carbon content low. This makes the metal soft. A soft blade cannot hold a sharp edge for very long. Under the impact of your cutting board, the microscopic edge of the blade will quickly roll over and become dull, requiring you to sharpen it constantly. Second is carbon steel. This is the darling of professional chefs and traditional purists. Carbon steel contains almost no chromium. It is just iron and a high amount of carbon. Because there is no chromium disrupting the internal molecular structure, carbon steel can be heat-treated to an extreme level of hardness. It takes a terrifyingly sharp edge and holds that edge for an incredibly long time. But the trade-off is high maintenance. Carbon steel has zero protection against moisture. If you cut a lemon and do not wipe the blade immediately, the acid will cause the metal to discolor within minutes. If you leave it wet, it will rust by the afternoon. Over time, it will develop a dark, matte gray patina. Chefs love this patina because it tells a story of use, but for the average home cook, the constant wiping, drying, and oiling can feel like a part-time job. Third is high-carbon stainless steel. If you are asking what the absolute best material is for a kitchen knife, this is your answer. High-carbon stainless steel is a modern hybrid alloy that blends the best characteristics of both worlds. It infuses a generous amount of carbon into a high-quality stainless steel base. This means you get a metal that is hard enough to hold a wicked, long-lasting edge, but it still contains enough chromium to protect it from rust, stains, and corrosion. It is the gold standard for anyone who wants exceptional performance without the stressful maintenance of pure carbon steel. The fourth material is ceramic, which is made from a high-tech powder called zirconium dioxide. Ceramic knives are completely non-metallic, meaning they will never rust and they won't cause sensitive foods like apples or lettuce to turn brown from oxidation. Because ceramic is incredibly hard, it stays sharp for years without any maintenance whatsoever. However, ceramic has a fatal flaw. It has absolutely zero flexibility. It is as brittle as glass. If you drop a ceramic knife on a tile floor or accidentally strike a stray bone, the blade will shatter or chip heavily. For that reason, it cannot be your primary kitchen knife. Now that you understand the metals and the philosophies, let us look at the actual types of knives and what they are used for. While a knife block contains dozens of options, you really only need to master the essential trio. The first and most important knife you will ever own is the chef's knife, typically measuring between 8 and 10 inches in length. This is the undisputed ruler of the kitchen. If a kitchen fire broke out and you could only save one tool, this should be it. The length and weight of a chef's knife provide the leverage needed to cut through heavy vegetables like butternut squash or large cuts of meat, while the curved blade allows for efficient, rapid chopping. A very popular alternative to the Western chef's knife is the Japanese Santoku knife. You will recognize a Santoku because it has a flatter edge and a face covered in small, hollow dimples called a Granton edge. These dimples create tiny pockets of air between the metal and the food, preventing sticky things like potatoes or cucumbers from clinging to the blade. If you prefer lightweight agility and vertical chopping over heavy rocking, a Santoku can easily replace a traditional chef's knife as your primary tool. The second essential tool is the paring knife, which is a tiny blade usually between 3 and 4 inches long. Think of the paring knife as the exact opposite of the chef's knife. While the chef's knife is designed to work on the cutting board, the paring knife is designed to work off the board, held completely in your hand. Its small size makes it incredibly nimble. You use it for intricate, detailed tasks where a large blade would be clumsy and dangerous. This includes peeling apples, coring tomatoes, scraping the seeds out of jalapenos, or deveining shrimp. The third and final essential is the serrated knife, often called a bread knife. This blade features a long, straight edge lined with sharp, jagged teeth, resembling a wood saw. The purpose of a serrated knife is to handle foods that have a stark contrast in texture. Specifically, a hard or slippery exterior and a very soft interior. When you try to cut a loaf of crusty sourdough bread with a smooth chef's knife, the blade will often slip off the crust or crush the soft, airy interior flat. The teeth of a serrated knife puncture the tough crust effortlessly, allowing you to saw through cleanly without deflating the bread. This knife is also your best friend for slicing ripe tomatoes, citrus fruits, and delicate cakes. Beyond these three essentials, you enter the realm of the specialists. You do not need these unless you perform specific tasks frequently. For example, a boning knife has a thin, highly flexible blade that allows you to contour the metal tightly against bones and joints, making it perfect for trimming meat or filleting fish. A cleaver is a massive, heavy rectangle of steel that uses pure weight and momentum to hack through thick bones and cartilage. A nikiri knife is a Japanese vegetable specialist with a completely square front and a flat edge, designed to make perfect, uniform contact with the cutting board for lightning-fast vegetable slicing. So, let us answer the golden question. Should you have all these knives in your home? The answer is a definitive no. Do not buy a prepackaged 18-piece set. Instead, build your own custom toolkit. Invest 80% of your budget into one spectacular high-carbon stainless steel chef's knife or Santoku that feels perfectly balanced in your hand. Then, spend the remaining 20% on a reliable paring knife and a decent serrated bread knife. Those three tools will handle 95% of everything you cook. To wrap up our masterclass, let us talk about the rules of knife ownership, because buying a great knife is only half the battle. Keeping it great requires breaking some very common bad habits. The first rule, and I cannot stress this enough, is to keep your knives out of the dishwasher. The dishwasher is a death sentence for a quality blade. The intense heat expands and contracts the steel, which can warp the blade or crack the handle. Even worse, the harsh, abrasive detergents pit the metal, and the violent water jets rattle the knife against plastic racks, instantly dulling the fine edge. Always wash your knives by hand with warm water and mild soap, and dry them with a towel immediately. Never leave them soaking in a sink full of water, which causes rust and creates a dangerous hidden hazard for whoever washes the dishes next. The second rule concerns your cutting board. The material you cut on matters just as much as the material of your knife. You should only ever use wood, bamboo, or high-quality plastic cutting boards. Never, under any circumstances, cut on glass, granite, marble, or ceramic countertops. These materials are significantly harder than steel. The very first time your knife strikes a glass cutting board, the microscopic edge of the blade will flatten out completely, destroying the sharpness instantly. Third, understand the difference between honing and sharpening. This confuses almost everyone. That long, ribbed metal rod that comes with knife sets is not a sharpener. It is a honing steel. When you use a knife, the microscopic teeth of the edge don't actually wear away immediately. They just bend to the left or right. The blade feels dull because the edge is misaligned. Running the blade down a honing steel doesn't remove any metal. It simply pushes those microscopic teeth back into a straight line, restoring the biting edge. You should hone your knife frequently. Sharpening, on the other hand, is something you do only once or twice a year using a whetstone or a specialized sharpener. Sharpening actually grinds away old, damaged metal to create a brand new, razor-sharp edge. To summarize everything we have explained today, step away from the massive, cheap knife blocks. They are filled with unnecessary clutter made from low-grade metal. Focus instead on building your own essential trio: a high-carbon stainless steel chef's knife or Santoku for your heavy chopping, a nimble paring knife for handheld precision, and a serrated knife for breads and delicate skins. Choose a Western profile if you want a rugged, rocking workhorse, or a Japanese profile if you want an ultra-sharp, push-cutting precision instrument. Take care of your investment by hand, washing it immediately, cutting only on wood or plastic, and honing the edge regularly to keep it aligned. When you stop treating knives like disposable kitchen utensils and start treating them like precision instruments, your cooking will become faster, safer, and infinitely more enjoyable. Thank you for tuning in to Let Sal Explain. Invest in quality, take care of your edge, and I will see you in the next video.